From outside Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee, this is Open Record at the RNC, the best of our week here at the RNC. I'm Brian Polson here with Jenna Sachs.
Hi.
Jenna, we just wrapped up our last live feed from the RNC. It's Thursday afternoon as we record this introductory segment, and you can see a lot going on behind us right here.
This is something we have not seen up until this point. These last 4 days, we've seen a lot, but right now there are just huge lines of people waiting to get in Fiserv Forum, and this is hours before the speaking events begin. We have not seen people this excited to get in and get a good seat before, and that's probably because we're hearing from Donald Trump tonight.
Tremendous amount of interest in just getting a seat to see the former president, now candidate, accept his nomination for the Republican Party for President of the United States. We have been here all week gathering interviews and getting a flavor of this huge event for Milwaukee. I think we've heard overall a sense that this has been successful. A lot of positive feedback about how the city and all the people involved have pulled this off.
We have been asking a number of delegates, how did Milwaukee do? And overall, we've been getting positive feedback. We have heard a few complaints about the weather and the fact that there is a lot of walking involved. But I think overall, we can say the impression is that Milwaukee did a good job.
And as we've gone throughout the week, some of the interviews we've done, I think everything's been fantastic, but some of the interviews we've done have really kind of stood out. And we wanted to give you a variety, a flavor. If you weren't able to watch all of our live streams, they're all available on demand on Fox Local. But if you want to see some of the highlights, we're going to bring those to you this week here on Open Record at our Best of the RNC. And we're going to do that when we come right back.
And welcome back to Open Record, live at the RNC. It's been a very eventful and memorable week for both of us and everyone who has been a part of this major event in Milwaukee. And we wanted to start by talking about day one, which was very exciting for everyone, getting the lay of the land. Delegates were arriving and vendors were setting up, and there was a lot of buzz, but things were just getting started.
It was also a really hot and humid day.
So hot.
We heard from many delegates getting their first impression of Wisconsin. It was hot, it was oppressively humid, and there were storms in the area, and there were some who said, this weather's terrible.
It was hard to work in it, I'm not going to lie. We were going from really hot temperatures inside to really cold AC, back and forth all day.
It got a lot better. But also there was a ton of business on day one.
Yeah.
We had the nomination of Donald Trump officially as the Republican nominee for President of the United States. And we also found out on day one who his vice presidential running mate would be, as he named J.D. Vance.
And we were also hearing from people their initial reactions to what had happened on Saturday night, the assassination attempt of President Trump. So there was a lot to talk about with people as they arrived. And we met one man, who you will hear from in a little bit, who was having a lot of opinions about that. He's a delegate from Florida. His name was Dean Black, and he took the time to speak with us about his impressions of how things were going so far at the RNC and how he felt about that assassination attempt.
We talked to him inside the new Baird Center, and just steps away from him was an exhibit we stumbled upon too, where we ended up standing inside the Oval Office.
That's right. It's called the American Presidential Experience. It was run by a guy named Warlick, and he travels all over the country with these replicas of things like the Oval Office or Kennedy's limousine or Air Force One, and he brought one here to the Baird Center to be part of Convention Fest.
So we'll take a listen to both of those interviews on day one from the RNC. You are in the Florida legislature. You are also chairman of, was it Duval County Republican Party, is that right?
That's right. Chairman of the Republican Party of Duval County. That's Jacksonville, Florida, and in the Florida House.
Can you tell me where you were and what your reaction was when you saw what was happening in Pennsylvania?
Sure. We were at home, my wife and I were packing, and we were watching the rally live on TV when it happened, and we watched it, and at first...
You're still in Florida at the time.
We're still in Florida. We're packing. It's late in the evening. We're watching the rally, and we see what's going down. We see what's happening, and at first we're not sure, and then we realize what's happened, and we're first in disbelief, and then shock, and then horror, real fear, and then I don't know if it was anger then yet, but anger has certainly come about, and we're just grateful that that former President Trump is okay, and our prayers and thoughts go out to the families of those who were killed and injured, and our prayers for our country too.
Does that in any way change how you feel about this week, what this week is about, what you had planned to do when you were here? How does it impact this convention?
Does it change it? In one sense, it changes nothing, and in another sense, it changes everything. And here's what I mean by that. It's full speed ahead. we're not changing our plans. We're going to persevere. We're going to follow the example of former President Trump, who defiantly held his fist skyward and said, fight, fight, fight. He's not being cowed, and we're going to persevere. And so we're not changing our itinerary, we're doing our job. But on the other hand, in a way, it's changed everything, because everything that we do now, this overlays it. It's just beneath the surface of every single conversation. And sometimes it works its way into that conversation. The emotions are just beneath the surface of everybody. You can be talking about ordinary things and suddenly this will bubble up and tears are right there pretty close.
I know there is a lot of excitement at these conventions about the parties, including the late night parties, but I'm wondering if people are necessarily in a partying mood after what happened over the weekend.
So I think some people will be in a partying mood. But the president has said, President Trump has said that we're going to continue on. We're not changing anything we're doing. We are going to proceed. We're going to get our job done. And I think when you see the inspiration that is Trump, when you see him standing there with his fist, having just been shot, and him looking after his people and encouraging us, I think no matter whether you're tired or not, you'll go to that party. You'll go to that party or be damned, because we are going to do our job. We are going to turn out Republican voters. We're going to unite the party. We're going to unite the country. And we're going to make America great again. And we're hell-bent and determined to do it now.
Has that been your feeling since you got here? I know you said you were tired when you arrived, but you felt like you still wanted to get out and attend all the events?
Yes. Yesterday, we were up at 3:30 a.m. to fly from Jacksonville, Florida. We were wheels up at 6 a.m. We were exhausted. And then they had this big event downtown. And I thought, okay, stay home, take a nap, recharge for tomorrow, or go. And I had to think about the president and his determination. He didn't stay down. He got back up. He got engaged. And that inspiration is coloring everybody and everything we do here. We got dressed and we went to the party last night. And I think everyone will be determined to not let a single thing change. They will do their duty.
We are speaking now with Jim Warlick of the American Presidential Experience. You have some replicas out here at Convention Fest today. Can you tell me a bit about what people can explore?
Well, this is a almost full-size Oval Office, and it's replicated mostly after Ronald Reagan's Oval Office. We have a presidential podium for the press room, and once people tour the Oval Office, they can have their photos made behind the president's resolute desk and the podium.
So tell me a bit about your business. Do you travel around providing different kinds of replicas, and what else, what might people see?
We have two Boeing 707 Air Force Ones. It's the fuselage, not the wings. And one is John Kennedy's, the way it was the day that he was assassinated. And the other is a Reagan, actually fitted just like it was when Reagan, and it's the president's quarters of the airplane in Air Force One. We have two of those. We have John Kennedy's White House presidential limousine, the original limousine, one of them, that stayed in Washington. We have a lot of John Kennedy items because we have a group called American JFK Experience, and so it's just about John Kennedy, that one. And then we have the White House gift store across from the White House in Washington.
Have you ever done a convention before?
Oh, I've done every convention, been to every convention since 1976, both Democratic and Republican. We exhibited Republican convention in 2000, in 2008 at the Republican Florida, I think that was 2004, 2016 was Philadelphia, Denver was 2008, so we've been to all of them, somehow either exhibiting the artifacts or selling official merchandise.
Do you have a construction background? How did you come to start putting together the Oval Office?
Well, where I got the idea of my store is across from the White House, and people would come to my store after touring the White House, and I'd say, how was the tour? And they said, well, it was pretty good, but we only saw 2 or 3 rooms. We didn't get to see the Oval Office. And I said, well, if you could see an Oval Office, even a replica, would you come to that? And they said, sure. Which president? And they said, Kennedy. Now that was 20 years ago when, young people today don't know about Kennedy. So I decided to build an Oval Office for the Bush inauguration. And so Paramount Studios built my first one, shipped it to Washington, and we had it in the rotunda at the train station. And it was such a hit. Then I eventually went out to Branson, Missouri, and built a museum called American Presidential Museum, and had the Oval Office and had Reagan's limousine, one of those there then, on loan from another museum.
And we will have more of the best of Open Record at the RNC right after this. Welcome back to Open Record, the best of Open Record at the RNC. I'm Brian Pulser with Jenna Sack. So day two, the weather was calming down a little bit. It was cloudy. It felt a little bit better.
It was a little better. That was a big day because Nikki Haley gave her speech that night.
Nikki Haley was speaking that night. It felt like after so much happened day one, though, day two seemed a little more subdued overall, I think.
Well, it was until about 2:45 in the afternoon, right? Because then we had the unfortunate incident that happened with the
Breaking
Ohio
news.
police force having to, or shooting a homeless man who was showing knives.
So
actually.
an out-of-state police force that was here helping Milwaukee police and helping do some of the perimeter security happened to observe someone with knives, and they said he was attacking another man, and they stepped in and ended up involved in a fatal shooting.
Because
that
as
kind
you
of
remember,
disrupted everything.
Absolutely, you remember we had all that out-of-town law enforcement. We've been seeing them everywhere this week, but they were also covering for Milwaukee police in some areas as well. And so that was something that occurred while we had Ohio watching some of our parts of the city.
There were no superheroes to help with that, but we did run into a superhero on day two, right?
We did. We were at our spot in Media Row over at Panther Arena, and we looked up and we saw Dean Cain doing an interview and found out he is a supporter of President Trump. So we have a clip from that coming up in a little bit. We also spoke with a guy who was selling some unusual poetry. His name was Gregory Woodman, and he was also part of Convention Fest at the Baird Center, and he had a booth set up selling Trump's poetry, so naturally we were interested in that.
Poetry he did not write, but that he assembled was Donald Trump's poetry. You can see that interview and also the interview with Dean Cain from day two.
And we are inside Media Row speaking with Dean Cain, who we just spotted here. What brings you to Milwaukee? I assume it's part of the Republican National Convention, but what in particular?
Well, an airplane brought me here, and it was terrifying coming in, by the way, because I came in through the storm last night. But I'm here because, well, I've been very active in politics and very vocal, and I'm a huge supporter of President Trump, and I really want to see him back in office. I'd like to see policy changes, not just here in the United States, but worldwide, and I think he's going to make a humongous difference. Obviously, I was planning on coming before all this stuff broke down and the attempted assassination, and I think that's going to change dialogue and change the president and change the direction of possibly the world. I mean, that was an earth-shattering event, and I think it's changed the president. And I'm really anxious to hear his speech, and I'm really anxious to hear the rhetoric and the ridiculous language come down from both sides.
Have you ever been to a convention before? And
No.
do you enjoy seeing this play out? Are you looking forward to anything in particular?
It's weird because it kind of feels like a huge Hollywood premiere, and you're seeing people that you recognize, congressmen and women and senators and people you know or you've seen on TV, or most of them I've had a chance to meet because I've been involved politically in a lot of different things. But it's funny to see, like, this is the center of the political universe right now here in the United States, and it's fun to see it here and be here. It's my first one ever, and so, you know, I don't have any expectations, but it's been pretty fun so far.
Brian, do you have any questions?
I do. Obviously, you're Superman. It's been reported, and you tell me if I'm wrong about this. I thought I read you had voted for Bill Clinton twice. Mm-hmm. You're talking about being a Republican, and that's what you identify with. That's your values. Superman could turn back time. If you could turn back time, would you go back and change that?
No, I like President Clinton. I liked him a lot. I voted for Al Gore. I would change that one. There's some votes that you put out when you're, listen, there's a saying, if you're not liberal when you're young, you have no heart. And if you're not conservative when you're older, you have no brain. And so I think that over a period of time that changes. And look, and I'm open about my views. The same way J.D. Vance, who's now our presidential candidate, changed his views on the president. So, I give everybody the grace to do so.
We have Gregory Woodman here, who has put together an interesting book that you're selling here at the Republican National Convention. Can you tell us a bit about this poetry?
Yeah, this is Donald Trump's tweets as concrete poetry. We gave him a library edition. This is a green cover with gold inlaid foil and a gold ribbon bookmark. It's broken up into chapter titles like Big, Bigger, and Biggest, like Introspective Musings, like Nocturnes. Those are his tweets between 2 and 4 a.m. He tweets, and then we reimagine them as concrete poetry in the E. Cummings style. And it's selling great. It's a great gift and a great coffee table book. And it's selling at TrumpPoetry.com.
What has been the reaction here among the delegates to this item?
Man, everybody seems to love it. It's selling really well. We're very proud of it. Yeah.
Do you think people find the humor in it? Do they enjoy a little? I think there's some fun to be had.
I think so. Jordan Peterson, we have a quote from him that says it best. But Jordan Peterson says that it's a beautiful edition and it has a lot of range. And the guy is super smart and it has a lot of humor to it. So they laugh like crazy while you're reading it. It's very fun.
You told us you don't talk politics, you just do poetry.
Well,
is that right?
I mean, Trump is a master poet, so we keep politics out of it. His tweets are poems, and we just sell them as they are.
What is your favorite section or passage? Tell me, what do you like best in here?
Okay, well, what inspired it all is in this section called Free Verse. Me and my friend Ian, who's getting coffee right now, we had an ad agency in Portland, and when Trump tweeted Kav Fifi, the famous Kav Fifi tweet, we thought to ourselves, man, is Trump just an amazing poet? And we just actually didn't understand. And then it all just clicked in our head and we were like, we have to make this book. And so this is my favorite spread. It's in the free verse section of the book. And this spread says, despite all the negative press, Kav Fifi, which inspired our merch line, the Kav Fifi merch. And yeah, that's my favorite spread.
Okay, you are sticking to the plan of saying he's this beautiful poet, but it feels like this is making fun of Trump, no?
Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. He is a poet. This is amazing work, yeah.
And you're still getting positive reaction from people here.
I mean, he's an amazing poet, so people love poetry.
We are here with Scott Klug, former Wisconsin congressman. You are here at the RNC. Tell us what you're doing here and what you're most interested in doing.
So I'm doing two things. I'm doing press on a podcast I do talking about the lost political middle, and I'm also doing briefings for the U.S. State Department for American embassies overseas. So I just did Croatia today, and I get to do Tunisia and Lithuania the rest of the week just to explain to folks on the other side of the world how the Republican convention works.
The lost political middle, I think a lot of people hear that and can immediately relate to that. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, this all started in a grocery store in Madison when the first Kevin McCarthy fiasco happened, and some guy taps me in the shoulder as I'm reaching for a bag of granola, and he goes, "Klug, what the hell's going on?" I mean, the Democrats are trying to take the stove out of my kitchen and the Republicans are banning middle school books. This is not what I signed up for. And so, the more you look at it, somewhere between 40 and 45% of the American public identifies with being in the middle. They want folks who will collaborate together and get things done.
So Donald Trump and J.D. Vance, can they bring people back to the middle, or is that going the other direction?
Well, I think, we're in the heart of the converted and the passionate here. So the Republican base and the Democratic base are firm in what they believe. I think most other Americans shop for political parties like they shop at grocery stores. They sort of like this idea on immigration and this idea on child care tax credits, and you could go through a long laundry list. And at the end of the day, they all sort of go up into a blender and they step into a voting booth and go here or go there. But I think the public at whole is just, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Trump's speech Thursday, because I think he's going to strike a very conciliatory remark. It'll be interesting to see what Trump's speech is like a week from Thursday, or if, a week from Friday, we're right back at it again, like sock'em rock'em robots.
We keep hearing turn the temperature down. Is that really going to happen, or like you said, is that a short-lived thing?
I think it's a short-lived thing right now in the sort of wake of the president and his successful attempt to escape assassination. But I think generally the public's ready for it to tone down. I mean, people don't act this way in any other part of their life. You don't at your church, you don't at the school your kids go to, you don't at your business, you sure as hell don't do it at home, but you do it in politics. And I think people in the United States are just ready to get back to a time where we're focused on collaborating and getting things done rather than scoring political points.
And we will be back with more of the best of Open Record from the RNC in a little bit. And welcome back to Open Record, the best of Open Record at the RNC. And now we are going to give you some insight into day 3. And that was the day when the weather got nice and people seemed a little happier outside. And
there was
people
a
were
buzz.
Settling into the week, having a good time.
I think a lot of buzz because they knew that was when they were going to get to meet officially J.D. Vance, from the state of Ohio, senator from Ohio, now nominated to be Donald Trump's vice president.
Yes, and some of the big events from that night where we heard from J.D. Vance, we heard from his wife Usha, we heard from a 98-year-old World War II veteran from Wisconsin who spoke and got a lot of positive reaction as well.
And during the day, we talked to some really interesting people. I really liked day 3. One of the first people we talked to on Open Record here was Luke Drea. who is a young Republican, 25 years old, I think.
Something like that, yeah.
A Wisconsin delegate, and one of many really young people in the Wisconsin delegation talking about that youth movement in Republican politics in Wisconsin.
And we also spoke with someone who's a bit more seasoned. We spoke with former Governor Scott Walker, and I'm glad you also asked him about Fiserv Forum, which was something he was instrumental in getting built in the first place.
Yeah, and he pointed out, I mean, after building and in putting the money toward building this arena, the Bucks won the championship, and now a major convention is here. So we'll hear more from him about that as well.
And we also spoke with a woman from Moms for Liberty. Her name was Tiffany Justice, and that was an interview that got a little heated. I'm not going to...
Congenial is not necessarily the word I would have used to describe it.
No, she was definitely impassioned, and we'll leave it at that. You can listen to all of those people we just mentioned. We have some a wrap-up of some of those interviews. You can take a listen.
We have Luke Drea, who is a lot of things. He's a Green Lake County supervisor. He is on the Berlin City Council, is that right?
That's correct.
Old Berlin, not New Berlin.
Old
we
Berlin.
talked about that. So you're part of the Wisconsin delegation, a young delegation in many ways. We said one of the youngest, is that right?
Yeah, one of the youngest. I believe there's at least 2 or 3 delegates that are younger than me. So it's amazing that we have 9 young Republicans serving either as delegates or alternate delegates for the Wisconsin delegation.
And you said you have an event for young Republicans coming up today?
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's coming up like any minute. It's after I finish here with you guys, I'm heading straight over to be with other young Republicans from across the country.
So you've been inside listening to a lot of these speeches. You told us before we got on the air here that Nikki Haley was one you really were taken by last night. Tell us a little bit about what you thought of her speech and why you were so interested in that one.
Well, I've always been a fan of Nikki Haley. I've been a fan since she was the governor of South Carolina, and that she did great work as an ambassador to the United Nations. And, Republicans, we're looking for unity right now, and that's what Nikki Haley delivered. So it was just great to see her, come home on that message for unity. It was gracious that President Trump invited her to speak. I mean, with both Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis to follow, the Republican Party is united to elect Donald Trump and J.D. Vance as the next president and vice president of the United States.
You get to be a part of history here, even at a young age, sitting inside Fiserv, listening to all these speakers. Is there anyone you're excited to hear tonight? There's a big lineup of people who are scheduled to speak.
It's pretty self-evident just hearing J.D. Vance. Not to say that vice president isn't already an important role, but given what happened on Saturday, I can't even imagine what he will say tonight. So hearing, the weight that he's going to have and how he's going to approach it because of the assassination attempt on President Trump's life. J.D. Vance is going to probably hit it out of the park like he always does. So I'm going to be in suspense until he finally approaches the podium tonight and delivers his speech.
Brian and I interviewed someone yesterday who referenced a familiar saying, you've probably heard it, where they say, if you're not liberal when you're young, you don't have a heart. If you're not conservative when you're old, you don't have a brain. What do you think about that, given the fact that you're young and conservative?
Yeah, I'm kind of like the black sheep of the youth, right? I'm the conservative young guy here, at the convention. I've never bought into that. I think it's just that young people, especially with technology, they're being exposed to ideas that are pushed onto them, especially through TikTok. So the way that we have to look at this as conservatives is how do we combat that? How do we actually get our message across to the youth? It also comes through once you actually get a real job and you start paying for a house and a car and other sorts of debts. All of a sudden your views change. But my parents have, instilled that into me. They're probably the hardest working people I ever met. I love them. They've done so much for me. That's the reason I'm here today. I probably wouldn't be able to afford to do this, but they were able to help fund this for me, as well as my grandparents and some family friends. So I'm grateful for them. If they're watching, I just want to give them a shout out, because without them I wouldn't be able to be here for this week for the convention and be here with you guys.
Earlier this week, when President Trump made his appearance, you were on the floor inside Fiserv Forum. At 25 years old, you're watching the president who's just survived an assassination attempt make his first appearance before a crowd like that. What was that moment like for you?
I think it fits with the theme of tonight. Tonight is Make America Strong Again. And you can see President Trump, when he was coming out, you could tell he was pretty emotional. I can't even imagine how that impacted his life after Saturday. I'm going to have that moment engraved in my mind for years on end, and being able to be on the floor, see President Trump make his first public appearance. That's a story that I'm going to probably tell my kids and grandkids, that I was on the floor, got to see President Trump after the assassination attempt, only 3 days later.
We're here at the RNC Outside Fiserv Forum with former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, the 45th governor of Wisconsin, president of the Young America's Foundation, and a delegate to the RNC for the state of Wisconsin. First of all, what have you been up to, Scott?
Well, a lot of interviews, which is why my voice is almost gone, but it's fun talking to delegates from all over the country. Actually, even talking to law enforcement. You see a lot of them around here. I'll make sure that they get their cheese curds. But it's just been a blast hosting, and we're so happy to have people here in Wisconsin.
Have you been on the floor watching the speeches?
Every day.
Last night, tell me, Nikki Haley, Ron DeSantis, what did you make of those speeches?
We'll talk about unity. It's a great way. Who would have thought just a few months ago that the Republican National Convention would be the one where we're united, where we're focused, where there's energy, where you could see some of President Trump's former competitors, both from this cycle and even many of us who were there 8 years ago, all together behind this ticket, and that you'd be looking ahead to a month from now, a very ununified convention when it comes to what might happen with the DNC in Chicago.
And yet some big Republican names not here. Paul Ryan, of course, one of them from Wisconsin. George W. Bush isn't here. Mike Pence for obvious reasons. But can the party be truly unified without some of those big players, long-standing Republicans, behind Donald Trump?
I think so. I mean, this is about looking about the future, not just about the past. We appreciate all the efforts of those mentioned. But the bottom line is to win in Wisconsin, to win in key states like Wisconsin around the country, we've got to have a focus on the issues, not on personalities, not on attacks, but about the things that people care about, which is affordability, security, and safety.
Let's talk about the assassination attempt from Saturday. I know you've talked about, you believe, divine intervention played a role here. Tell me about that.
I do. I mean, I was a kid, literally a kid, when Ronald Reagan was shot more than 4 decades ago. I remember how shocked and afraid we all were. But Ronald Reagan, after that, talked about the divine plan, that God, the DP as he called it, God had a plan for him, and it greatly affected his work, not only here in America, but what he did for freedom-loving people around the world. I sense that same thing will happen with our past and hopefully future President Donald Trump. I think we saw it even the other day. I was literally right there in the Wisconsin section. He was right behind us as he went up to the stand. You could sense it. There was a different feel to that moment, certainly for us as delegates, but I also think for the former president.
You, 4-term Governor Tommy Thompson, and U.S. Senator Ron Johnson are all part of the leadership team for Donald Trump here in Wisconsin. 4 years ago, 20,000 votes cost him the state of Wisconsin. What are you doing and what can you do to deliver those 20,000 votes or more to get him over the top this year?
Yeah, amongst the three of us, we've won statewide elections 10 times here in Wisconsin. So the key is connecting to those swing voters. And I think the most important about that is really two things. Connect on the issues. When you think of filling up your gas tank at Quick Trip, filling up the grocery cart, paying for your mortgage or your rent, it's about affordability, talking about affordability, safety, and security. Got to be right in the issues. And I think swing voters, particularly here in the suburban areas where some of those voters shifted away 4 years ago, I think many of them have buyer's remorse. We've got to continue to hammer away on those issues, affordability, safety, and security. And the other part is just tone. I think we're going to see some of that tomorrow night. The tone is, hey, this is less about opponents as it is about caring for everyday Americans. The biggest appeal that helped Donald Trump carry Wisconsin in 2016 was he was the guy fighting for the forgotten, for the people who feel that all the politicians, not just one part or the other, but all the politicians have really lost sight of what's important to people here in this state. If Donald Trump can make that case again like he did in 2016, he wins.
I think it was 2015, you signed a bill giving $250 million toward the construction of a Bucks arena. We're standing in front of that arena right now, and the Republican convention is here. Did you dream of this when that happened, and how do you feel thinking about that now today?
Well, we hoped the Bucks would win the NBA championship. They've already done that. We never knew it would lead to something like this, and we'd hoped 4 years ago even the DNC would be here, but to have a national convention here in an arena we built without a tax increase. It's one of the things I proudly tell people here. We built this, proud to do it when I was governor. We cut that deal, but we also did it without a new tax increase. One of the few, if any, in the country that's done that. It's amazing to have people not only here in Wisconsin, but particularly in the heart of Milwaukee.
We are speaking now with Tiffany Justice, co-founder of Moms for Liberty, a group we're hearing a lot more about these days. You're a relatively new organization. I believe you formed in 2021. Can you tell me a bit about why Moms for Liberty was created?
Yeah, I was a school board member serving during COVID. Tina Deskovich, the co-founder, was as well. And what we saw was the government thinking they knew better than us for our kids and that they weren't respecting our parental rights. So we needed to stand up. We knew we needed to get other moms to stand up too. And so Moms for Liberty is a grassroots army community that's fighting to protect parental rights at all levels of government.
I've read that your organization advocated for the abolishing of the Department of Education. I see that's included in the GOP platform. Is that a win for you?
It's a huge win for us. I did as much as I could to influence the education platform of the Republican Party. Moms, again, want a seat at the table, and so we want to see the bureaucracy stop. This idea that government thinks they know better than us for our kids, or that we're using taxpayer dollars for leftist propagandizing in schools, indoctrination, needs to stop. And so getting rid of the Department of Education will help us to do that, because it'll eliminate some of the power that the teachers' unions in America have, and it's about time that we put them back in their place where they belong.
Do you think that will be rather chaotic, or would those responsibilities go to other agencies? How would that even work?
Yeah, everybody wants to make a big deal about abolishing the Department of Education. There are other agencies that can handle a lot of the tasks that they do. It will not be chaotic, but here's what I've learned. The people that want to protect the system, the people that make money off the system, they never like anyone to come in and ask questions. When you come in, they treat you like, so chaotic. We're not going to be able to do this. It's going to cause so many problems. That's a lie. That's a lie to keep us from making change happen. That's a lie to keep us from putting power back into the hands of the people. And I don't like liars, so I'm going to call them out every single time. We can dismantle the Department of Education. We'll ensure that the dollars go directly to students instead of funding systems.
There's a lot said about your organization online. I'm sure you're no stranger to threats, and I know you're no stranger to protesters. A lot of angry rhetoric out there. Do you feel like there is some toning down that needs to be done, or do you feel like we should be changing how we discuss certain things?
I think that the left and the Democrats are trying to reach a boiling point. They want to incite problems. There is a ratcheting of Moms for Liberty is a threat to democracy. Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. That somehow parents standing up for their kids and wanting to protect their parental rights is a threat to democracy. What nonsense. You saw a shooter try to assassinate President Trump. You know how old that kid was when COVID happened? He was 16. So when the Democrats and Joe Biden and the teachers union shut our schools down and locked kids in their homes for 2 years and put them on Zoom school and hurt their mental health, what did you expect? They broke kids. We're losing a generation of children. That kid was bullied in school. We only have a third of kids reading on grade level in America. What do people expect when you treat children like that, when we don't put a focus on families and parents being engaged? So is there a need for a calming? 100%.
It sounds like you're blaming schools for the assassination attempt. Is that fair?
I'm blaming the teachers unions for shutting down schools and for hurting the mental health of our kids. I want to know, where was that kid when he was 16 years old? What happened with his school in Pennsylvania? Schools in Pennsylvania were shut down for a long time. And so what I'm saying is that we have a generation of children who are showing that they have mental health issues. And our schools and our teachers unions are not paying attention to parents who are sounding the alarm every single day that we're concerned about whether or not our kids are learning to read in school. We're concerned about the divisive rhetoric, the critical race theory, the critical pedagogy, the gender ideology that's being shoved into every crack and crevice in America. Little kids, 5-year-olds being taught you could be a boy or you could be a girl or maybe you could be a tree that day. We're tired of it. It's nonsense. We need to teach kids to learn to read and write and do math in school, to learn accurate history, to learn about science. We need to get back to the basics in American public education.
Do you think it's too soon to come to some of those conclusions, though? We're still learning about this man's background. Do you think it's too soon to start pointing blame?
Absolutely, it's not too soon. To point blame, what I'm saying is that he's part of a generation, my daughter's generation, by the way, who at 15 years old in 9th grade was locked in her room on Zoom school. There are repercussions. Decisions have consequences. And what we've done is throw away a generation of kids. We haven't invested in their future. We've told them that the American public schools have told them that America is a broken country.
I think that was maybe the most remarkable part of that, is that she was really taking the assassination attempt and tying it back to teachers and school shutdowns and COVID. It was a remarkable tie that I don't think we've heard from anyone else.
Well, and you have to also remember that my question wasn't about that. I asked her about heated rhetoric in this campaign and the role it might be playing, and that was where she took that question. So we were trying to make sure we understood what she was saying, and you could hear me asking those follow-up questions as well. But I could feel her getting a little heated with me during that interview. I think she didn't like maybe a question I asked about whether they were a bipartisan organization. Who knows what it was, but it got heated.
It was like you said, it was an impassioned interview.
Yes, certainly.
We have day 4 still ahead here on Best of Open Record at the RNC, and we'll bring you that when we come right back. Welcome back to the Best of Open Record at the RNC. I'm Brian Polson here with Jenna Sachs. Day 4, of course, the big day. It is the day that Donald Trump officially accepts the nomination to be President of the United States for the second time. And we also talked to some interesting people on day 2, including...
Day 4, you mean?
Or day 4, including someone from New York. And it was really interesting to get the perspective from the outside of what people thought of not just the convention, but of Milwaukee, because we've wondered what sort of an impression are people getting who've never been here before.
Right, and we know how much effort officials in Milwaukee have put into this event. We know about all the volunteers who got involved. So we really wanted to find out, what do people think of how it's going, especially the visitors from places like New York. And we know those New Yorkers can be hard to impress. So I was glad we spoke to Bruce Blakeman about that. He is a delegate from New York. And we also spoke with someone from Wisconsin who we're more familiar with.
Especially when it comes to how Milwaukee did. Dale Kinga, a former state representative and now president of the Milwaukee Metropolitan Association of Commerce, here to talk about the business impact. And a lot of people are talking about the immediate impact. He wanted to talk long-term about what this means for Milwaukee and Milwaukee's image worldwide. So we've got those interviews, and you can take a listen to those now.
We are speaking with Bruce Blakeman from Nassau County in New York. You're a delegate here. How do you think Milwaukee did this week?
I think they've done a terrific job. It's extremely well organized. The people are incredibly friendly. You have so many volunteers who gave up their valuable time to help with the convention. And we've had a lot of interaction with a lot of those volunteers. They've just been so helpful to me and my staff. And I got to tell you, the weather, you name it, the food, we've eaten at your local restaurants. They've done a great job, and we're looking forward to another night of hospitality here in Milwaukee.
What are your highlights looking back on the last 4 days?
I think it was the Gold Star mothers last night, telling their story about their children who, gave up their lives for service in our American military, and the fact that Donald Trump really embraced them when Joe Biden didn't at all. So that was a very poignant moment. I think everybody was emotional, and of course the Israeli hostage, Omer Nutra, who's an American citizen, his parents got up to speak. And J.D. Vance gave a great speech last night. You can tell why he's a leader and why President Trump picked him to be the vice presidential nominee, because he's a solid guy with a very, very interesting and compelling background. So, but again, I just want to say to the people of Milwaukee, you've done an amazing job. I think the Republican National Committee was very wise to come here, and your people are awesome, very kind, very helpful, and it doesn't matter what their politics are. They just want to put Milwaukee's best foot forward, and they have in a big way. I'm going to come back to visit with my family because I was so impressed with this community.
Well, thank you for saying that. Is there anything you were able to do outside the perimeter? You said you went to some restaurants. Were you able to do any sightseeing, or was it mostly taken up by convention activities?
Yeah, we're doing a little sightseeing. We're helping the local economy. We're spending some money at the shopping mall. Some of our people have gone out and experienced some of your better golf courses here in Milwaukee. This afternoon, I'm going to go to one of your parks and take a nice walk. And the restaurants are really, really good. We ate at Carson's last night. That was delicious. Very, very good food, and the service was great. Especially we had 70 people there, so it was hard serving 70 people, but they did an outstanding job. And I think we're going to try Calderone tonight. We hear that's a good Italian restaurant. So, but we've been going to all the local places and trying to help the economy, and we've been very pleased with the food, the service, the people. Again, it's just been a really, really pleasant experience here in Milwaukee.
Dale Kinga from Milwaukee Metropolitan Association of Commerce is here, and you're leaning back, sitting back for my benefit, because
you guys are you're not short though. I'm just extraordinarily tall. So for your international viewers, I'm 2 meters.
We are grateful for your thought.
Yes.
Right, for the sake of this shot, he decided to sit for us. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks
This is a huge event for the city of Milwaukee, and obviously this has been a long time coming. Day 4. Let's talk about the impact. What are you seeing? What's your experience so far?
How's it going?
Well, Milwaukee is an international brand. That's because the Brewers, the Bucks. But if you look at it from a global level, there are hundreds of cities just in China or just in India that are exponentially larger than Milwaukee. So when we're looking from an economic development standpoint, we're trying to recruit companies like Komatsu or Milwaukee Tool or the new Kinkelman. So it's so helpful for those companies to know Milwaukee and see Milwaukee and for also sell Milwaukee. So there's definitely an economic impact this week, which is positive, but we're looking at the longer term where people look at Milwaukee and say, that's a place I could live, that's a place I can invest in.
How do you go about measuring that kind of impact? And will we get some firm numbers eventually on how we did?
Yeah, there's different economic indicators. I mean, I think some of this is more softer and over time.
Okay.
But obviously, population growth you want to see over time, the visiting numbers. I know Visit Milwaukee has some great numbers on their bookings are at an all-time high for future events beyond this. And then economically, one of the big sources of investment in our region has been foreign direct investment. So over time, we'll see foreign direct investment measure that. And our hope is that events like this, raising Milwaukee's profile, will have that positive impact.
What do you tell to the small business owner who's maybe outside this security perimeter, who is expecting more of that immediate impact, and they're going, gosh, we've been dead this week, and we thought there was going to be more out of this, and you say, but long term it's going to be great, and they go, well, I don't know if we have a long term. What do you say?
Well, I mean, I think they do have a long term. What we had this week, we had 80,000 workers that are downtown working out, and a lot of them said, I can't get down, it's so busy because of the security situation. So this is the long-term game. I know that's people like Dana Perina on Fox was saying, the restaurant scene here is amazing. And so there'll be traffic here in the future and go, and I think, but generally speaking, net, this is a positive economic impact for restaurants.
Are you seeing any signs that this strategy is working, that this investment is already paying off? Maybe more people are interested in visiting. I don't know if you have any idea already if it's paying off.
It's paying off, and I'm just like you, I'm walking down the streets here and I'm grabbing people, where are you from, what's your impression? Very, very favorable. The security situation has been remarkable. The protesters, which have been few, have been respectful. Great dialogue, debate. We're out here on the floor. I mean, I got to give kudos to our mayor, Cavalier Johnson. He's clearly a Democrat. Everyone knows that. Our county exec, David Crowley, clearly a Democrat. And they're up there in the box, hanging out with people, listening to speeches, being pleasant. And that's just what we represent as a community, is just coming together. And let me just talk about the biggest impact of this is we got a lot done in Milwaukee for more education funding for schools. We solved the pension crisis with the county and the city. That relationship started because Republicans and Democrats worked together and said, let's have a historic event right here in Milwaukee. And I think we're going to see more political compromises and deals because those relationships exist now and there's good faith on both sides.
People want to know what that economic impact is. They want a number, but how much of this is intangible? How much of this is people all over the country, maybe all over the world going, hey, Milwaukee, they can host a huge event like that. That must be a cool place.
Well, there's a huge intangible. I mean, I could go through the country and say, give you a country, say, what do you think of? I mean, see Las Vegas, you have something on your mind, right? Or Detroit, you think automobiles. I think Milwaukee, when people think of Milwaukee, they won't go back to, Laverne and Shirley, right? I think they'll think about something like this, or, when we built this stadium, MMSU is a big part of that, among other parties, it was sold not just as a basketball arena. We said this could be an arena for so much more. And so it's really transforming Milwaukee. I mean, we had an event the other day with 70 ambassadors from around the world, and we did it at AmFam Field. And we said, this is the place you want to be if you want to do forward direct investment. And we looked at the Calatrava, the art museum down here, another architectural monument, and the architect of that, who is from Spain, said, only in Milwaukee can this be built.
Tonight's the big night for President Trump to give his speech. Former President Trump, candidate Trump, are you going to be in there, and what are you looking forward to hearing?
I will be in there, and I think most of what he's going to say, we probably know what he's going to say. The energy will be ecstatic. I mean, it's going to be high energy. And
do you expect a different President Trump than we might have seen had Saturday not happened?
Yes. I mean, when someone gets shot, as Winston Churchill says, there's nothing more exhilarating than being shot at unsuccessfully. I think that really makes you rethink a lot of things, life outside of politics. And I think we're already seeing more of a different type of perspective and messaging. So it'll be interesting. I think there will be I'll just tell you, the speech that he had written last week is not the speech you're going to hear tonight.
We'll have more of the best of Open Record from the RNC right after this.
And I guess now we wrap things up. As we tape this right now, it's still day 4. There's a big crowd of people waiting to get in and listen to more of the speeches tonight. We're expecting to hear from Eric Trump, Tucker Carlson, and Donald Trump, of course. So I'm sure by the time this airs, people will know how that went. But it's been a big week. We had a memorable time here. I think it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing for a lot of journalists. You don't often have this come to your city. So it was really exciting to be here and just witness the theater and the spectacle of it all.
And it won't be be long and not far down the road before the Democrats have their own convention. Of course, the DNC was sort of here in 2020, but COVID wiped most of that out.
Yeah.
The Republican convention here now, and the DNC will now be in Chicago next month, and who knows what that's going to mean with all the questions about whether or not Joe Biden, and by the time this comes Sunday, maybe that'll be answered.
We will know more.
As we record this, we still don't know if Joe Biden will in fact be the candidate for the Democratic Party or if it will be someone else.
Well, thank you for being my partner this week. I think we had a memorable time, didn't we?
I'll never forget it. This has been a blast.
Well, thank you for joining us here on Open Record as we summarize the best of our week here at the RNC. We'll see you next time.